Forleo, coach, oradora, motivadora, autora y presentadora de Mary TV, especialista en conectar personas que podrían ayudarse entre sí y hacer sinergias. Considerada una de las mujeres emprendedoras más influyentes de los Estados Unidos. Muestra que la convicción y pasión pueden hacerte alcanzar tus sueños. Inspírate con las 10 reglas del éxito de Forleo.
Get a go-to mantra. So this strategy involves making up just this little phrase that you can say to yourself in those clutch moments, either when you're about to go into a big meeting or when you just need to sit down and do your work. Mindy Kaling, whom I love, suggested this as a motto. Why the f*** not me? And she's got the book to back it up. Now, I have to say, I've got my own version that I pull out when I need it every once in a while, too. You're Forleo. You got this, bitch. Okay, say it back. You're Forleo. You got this, bitch. Yeah, you do. Chest bump. Now, a little science note here. When it comes to motivational self-talk, research shows that talking to yourself in the third person can help you actually feel less anxiety and perform better. So get yourself a go-to mantra and some bonus points if you use your first name. As someone who's been consistently creating content and sharing content for almost 2 decades now, I speak from experience. And I gotta tell you, being consistent with your content creation, it is so important. It's actually one of the biggest factors in our company's success. So when it comes to coming up with things to write about or talk about or teach about, I really do believe that I can never run out of ideas because literally there's always more where that came from. Look, people, we live in an abundant, ever-changing, ever-expanding universe. It's literally impossible to run out of ideas, I promise you. Now, this doesn't mean that I never feel like I run out of ideas or that I don't occasionally wonder if I'm tapped out. I mean, believe me, I have those moments. But when that happens, I remember my magical mantra that there's always more where that came from, and it changes everything like that because there's always another story to tell. There's always another way for me to serve. There's always someone who could use a helping hand or a kind word or a reminder about how freaking great they are. And from that space, ideas always come. I was always into a lot of different things. I had a ton of energy. I remember I would make up dances with my friends and like choreograph stuff in the living room, and then I would go, and I remember actually having Encyclopedia Britannica and like copying it down and like rewriting the content and making new pictures and creating things. So as a little girl, I was always wanting to learn new things, do new things, and create stuff. You know, I was a cheerleader, so and by the way, I wasn't a cheerleader for a while. I got rejected so many times. I tried out, I can't even tell you, I would practice in my living room. I'd put the video camera up to try and like figure out why my arm wasn't straight enough. But I always just wanted to express myself in all these different ways. And when, you know, my parents kept these great books of when I was little where you kind of record what your kids want and what they're into and all those things. And I remember in the section where it says, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was always 5 to 7 things. It was never just one thing, and they were all completely different. It was like from dancer to teacher to model to actress to writer, like all these different kind of professions that sounded fascinating to me. So that was me when I was little. I was all over the place. One of the things about my team in particular is we do share a lot of DNA. So everyone does have very high standards. They want to be the best. They want to crush it. They want to come out with new things. They want to be innovative. They want to always be at that next level. So I can only play with people like that because they're the only people that get my kind of little weirdness and craziness. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we're also realists, and we've been in this game long enough to realize you're not going to hit a home run every single time. I always like to call it the SNL effect. Like, I love SNL. I think it's a great show. I've always watched it, you know, but you don't get to dick in a box unless you actually do all of these other skits. I mean, it was one of the funniest, in my opinion. I know people are like, but it was one of the funniest skits back in the day. It was hilarious. And I remember watching that thing so many times and going like, this is genius. Remember Justin Timberlake? And it was just like this whole thing. Again, in today's culture, in 2019 culture, that would get ripped apart. I'm talking about in that particular moment in time, I thought it was funny. You don't get to some of their most hilarious skits unless you produce a lot of work. So coming back to your point in terms of high standards, you can have really high standards for things, but you have to allow yourself to do a lot of volume and make mistakes. So an example was in the fall, we went out and did some things on the road that it was a new thing. And we're not using any of the footage because it wasn't very good. I'm not crying in my cereal over that. That's like part of the game. So I think it's very possible to have high standards, which is different than perfectionism, and allow yourself the grace and the space to play and experiment and fall on your face or not use stuff. Wherever you are on the plane, JetBlue has really given thought to the details, and I love this. So for example, free Wi-Fi. And I know it sounds silly, but so many damn flights that I've taken make me pay this extra 25 or 30 bucks just to get work done when I've already paid a ton of money to fly. So free Wi-Fi for the entire plane, I gotta say, that's a nice perk when we're all so used to being nickel and dimed. Next, I gotta talk about snacks. So on longer flights, they have this self-service snack situation in the economy cabin, which is so humane. And I have to tell you that in Mint, which is their business class that I fly because I mean business, Brett, my fantastic, super cool flight attendant, brought me this refreshing lime mint spritzer. I was so impressed with that beverage branding. Flying in Mint class and getting a mint drink, nicely done. And last but not least, Brett also called me by my first name, Marie, instead of Miss Forleo. Now, of course, he could have called me Forleo, and I would have been down for that. But who doesn't want to hear their first name? And he kept calling me by my first name throughout the entire flight. It was kind, it was friendly, and it gave me the sense that he actually cared about me. So what I want you to do is think about all the little details in your business. Where and how can you go the extra mile for your people? What can you do to make people just feel that things are more personable and thoughtful? Rather than feeling like you have to strain that big, beautiful brain of yours to come up with ideas, you can literally snatch them from all around you because everyday life contains endless material. Things that you overhear, something you notice out the window, maybe it's a lyric from a song or a scene from something on TV, an interaction that you had in the line at Starbucks. Literally, content is everywhere. It's like air, but unlike air, you can snatch it. So here's an example. One day I was here in New York City and I overheard this woman on her cell phone as she walked past me. She was super upset, she was frustrated, and she said, "I'm just not great with financial stuff. I just can't handle it." And yes, she was British. So immediately I whipped out my cell phone and I shot this video right here. And I talked about why it's so important that people stop telling themselves these negative stories about money. And I talked about how important it is, especially for women, to take charge of their finances. Then a couple hours later, I slapped that thing up on Facebook and boom, content snatched and hacked. Culturally speaking, we've mostly been taught that the feminine is weak, right? That's why so many women man up to run a business. For me, for years and years and years, it produced incredible results, but you know what? At a tremendous cost, where I felt myself and my creativity starting to just drain down, where I felt myself getting more and more stressed, less and less joyful, where I found myself feeling more and more tired and asking the questions, why? Because I know my core essence. So that is one of probably the biggest mistaken notions that we have culturally, is that the feminine is weak, and it is not. It is one of the most beautiful, powerful forces within all of us. And I think, and I'll speak particularly to the women who are watching right now, one of the most profound things that you can do over the course of your life, especially if you struggle with being in your feminine, is to understand that it will unlock your most powerful, beautiful, creative life that you could imagine, which includes your ability to kick major ass in business, and it includes your ability to heal others. I studied finance in college, and I remember knowing I have so much energy, and I didn't see myself sitting behind a desk doing corporate finance. And I thought the only place that I could possibly thrive was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, because there's actually no physical seats. You run around all day long. It's kind of crazy and intense, and it sounded pretty awesome to me. And when I got there, I felt so grateful to actually have a job and have a good job. And it was so exciting, feeling like you're in the center of the financial universe. And when I looked at all the people around me, you know, they were making tons of money, like ridiculous amounts of money, more than I could even comprehend. But as time went on, I started to realize that they weren't happy and I wasn't happy. It was like everyone I worked with, they only looked forward to these 2 weeks a year that they had vacation. And I was like, this is not my life. This is not what I'm supposed to do. And this little voice inside me kept saying, this is not where you're meant to be. You're meant to do something bigger. You're meant to do something greater. But the whole problem was that little voice didn't tell me what I was supposed to be doing. It just was saying, this isn't it. So eventually it got so loud. And for me, my intuition speaks very viscerally. Like I hear things inside and it starts to get so uncomfortably physically that I have to make a move. And I finally found myself one day so miserable, I felt like I was gonna cry. And I had to actually leave the floor. And I walked out, and right near Wall Street, there's Trinity Church. And I was raised Catholic, and so I saw the church, and I was like, I have to go to the church. And I sat on the steps, and I pulled out my cell phone. I called my parents. I was crying my eyes out. I felt like such a loser because I grew up in a very middle-class family. My parents busted their buns to put me through school, and here I was having this safe and secure job, for all intents and purposes, an amazing job, and I wanted to quit, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I just told them, I don't want to, be a failure, but I can't do this anymore. My dad said something so powerful to me, I will never forget it. He said, don't worry about the money. He's like, you have to figure out what you love. If you figure out something that you love to do, everything else is going to take care of itself. So if you've got to quit, and everything will work out. And I remember I walked back into the floor and I had to, wipe my face. And that was the beginning of the end. I think within 2 weeks I gave my notice and I had to leave.
If you've got all your attention on yourself thinking, well, what's gonna generate a whole bunch of likes? Or what's gonna get people talking about me? Or what's gonna make me more famous? Or me more relevant? Or me more popular? You are thinking about content creation in the wrong damn way. Because whether you realize it or not, you're prioritizing self-importance over being of service. You're thinking about what you can get versus what you can give, which is always a losing proposition. This is especially true on social. When you're locked into what I call the me mind, that's a guaranteed way to make sure that you feel desperate, anxious, and unworthy. And I don't know anybody who can come up with great content ideas when they're feeling desperate, anxious, or unworthy. Do you? Of course not.
When I take a spin class, a really good spin class where I'm loving the music and I can absolutely let go and charge into my body, I can feel into every single movement. I can let the sweat pour off of me. I can get lost in the rhythm. I find that it opens up a channel in me like nothing else. Sometimes it could be taking a great walk.
I want to push you a little bit on opens the channel so I really understand it.
Yes.
Is it where you feel like you can hear the little voice in your mind? Is it where you're...
Ironically, you can't try and force it to show up. So oftentimes when I hit a roadblock in my business and I'm just at this stalemate, I'm like, oh, I can go this way or this way, I'm stuck. Let me go work out. Let me go take a walk. Let me take a spin class. Let me take a dance class and get immersed in that so that my subconscious and the rest of my body has a chance to work through it, and it will produce an answer or an insight when I'm not looking for it. It could happen at the end of the class, when I'm done in the shower. Sometimes it happens on the bike. It doesn't matter. But what you just have to do is have a level of faith and trust, and you can't go in forcing it. I feel like what happens through exercise, and again, it's when you have that level of faith to surrender to your body, to surrender that you have wisdom within you, that you're not going to access grinding to it. It unfurls almost like a flower blooms when it's ready.